on YouTube. You don't know who's watching. That's the kind of thing that leads to most
no, I mean, very similar.
So, good evening, everybody. Hence Philip Wicks, I'm chair for this meeting, so may I welcome you all to the 12th of July meeting of the Planning and Community Committee of Woodley Town Council. May I advise all attendees that the Council reserves the right to record and broadcast this meeting. Woodley Town Council meetings are now recorded, with meetings streamed live and stored on the Town Council's YouTube channel. So anybody attending the meeting will, by virtue, consent to having both their audio and video recorded and transmitted for this purpose. If you do not wish for your image and audio to be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. No one's got up. Okay. The Town Council is consulted by Wokingham Borough Council on planning applications within Woodley, but the final decision of approved or refused is taken by Woodley Borough Council. Wokingham Borough Council, to apologise, promoters. We will notify Wokingham Borough Council of the committee's views, which may include any comments and concerns expressed by members of the community affected by the application. So if anyone has any comments to make on any of the planning applications, then they need to formally write or send an email to the Wokingham Borough Council Planning Department, as they will take the final decision on the application. And finally, for those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill tonight, I hope. So if you hear the fire alarm, the procedure is to immediately head to the nearest fire exit point and congregate at the fire assembly point adjacent to the open centre at the front of Woodford Park. So before we start formal proceedings, we're very pleased to welcome Sergeant Simon Botham and Claire Tells, who's going to have a chat with us about the concerns that the committee have had and some of the townsfolk have had recently with regards to the cycling and the e-scooting movements within Woodley Precinct. So if I can hand over, please, to Simon. Thank you.
Try and get Claire back up there. So if I stand here, it's easiest, and the camera can see me. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting us along today. I think it's been well overdue that we come and attend. I know that the last couple of years have stopped us from being able to do this in person, certainly, so we're very glad to be back, and hopefully it'll become a much more regular feature, not just me but my team coming to these council meetings and regularly to other meetings in and around Woodley. As just a very brief background, so my role, I'm the sergeant for the Wokingham North neighbourhood team. The team itself went through a restructuring during the COVID period, so we changed from being 3 distinct areas across the Wokingham borough and have now become 2 areas. So we've become Wokingham North, which encompasses everywhere from Remenham all the way down to Winnersh, and then the Wokingham South team that covers everything else, the town centre and out towards Winchampston. I personally have been on the area for about 15 years. I started my career here over at Twyford in the neighbourhood role. I have gone through very different roles. I'm police up in Oxford Town City, but I'm very glad to be back, and I'm with the team, and I took over from Mark Smith, who's with you, I think probably will know. So some very big boots to fill from that side. Moving on in terms of, and I promise you I won't be very long because it is actually roasting in here. I think to address the issue of e-scooters and e-bikes, which certainly we recognise as a team and as a force has become an increasing issue, certainly from not only just being a general nuisance, the ASB side of it, but actually being quite a significant danger to pedestrians and road users alike. So we are aware of that. From the e-scooter perspective, as I think people are probably aware, they've become quite a trend, certainly with younger children all the way up to young adults. They are seen as an alternative means of transport. They're more popular because of all the rising cost of fuel, etc. And they're easy to purchase, so there is no requirement to show any sort of documentation of purchase. and no, necessity for you to say, well, I'm only going to use this on private land. So as the law stands, they can only be used on private land. They are not road legal. They have no ability to be on the road. But as we have all seen, they are used on roads, they're used on pavements, they're used in the Woodley precinct. And so they are an issue. In terms of the way Thames Valley have looked at this and the way that as we as a team have been looking at it, certainly the initial point was that we would look through engagement and education. So we have gone out, proactively stopped certainly younger children, explained to them that their use on the road is not allowed, and that if we do continue to see them, we identify them, then we would remove the e-scooter itself. We can take them back to the parents to explain to the parents. That can only go so far. A lot of the children do not recognise that, are not particularly interested, and continue to use them as their means of transport. The Thames Valley position in terms of the e-scooters themselves, I think as some of you will be aware, there are ongoing trials with actually registered e-scooters. And so that makes the position slightly more difficult in that we're getting one bit of information from one side saying these are probably or could be road legal, but the other position saying, no, in fact, they're not. So there is a little bit of difficulty there. And I know that the Chief Constable has recently been quoted, at least within the Oxford area, saying that we will now look at enforcement if the legislation isn't coming through soon. So the actual enforcement element of it is around road traffic legislation. So it would be using a mechanically propelled vehicle or a powered scooter on a road. So it would be without insurance. So the ability to seize the e-scooter, to fine the individual, and to put points on a license that probably doesn't even exist yet. So it would be a race license. Obviously, that is quite a drastic measure, and it's quite a hefty fine. So prior to that, in the last phase that we will use prior to any updates in legislation, will be to go to the schools and try and again convey this message that if the scooters are seen out and about, that enforcement may take place. And recently we've run a proactive operation within the Woodley precinct, again stopping individuals, educating them, explaining to them the dangers of using the scooters.
Also on that, that was just to educate. However, we did see something driving it in quite a dangerous manner. So we issued section 59 warning to a young person who went to his house in front of the council and issued that. So that was just to educate. However, we think it's so bad that actually we said no, we will give them section 59.
And I think again, the section 59, sorry, the legislation, it's a really useful bit of ASB legislation. It is, yeah, it's more commonly used with actual vehicles. So where we see vehicles driven in an antisocial manner, the section 59 can be both applied to the vehicle itself and to the driver, both of which then, if they continue to commit offences, then the vehicle can be seized. So that is the legislation under that. The difficulty, and as Claire rightly pointed out, in that instance, the individual was acting in an antisocial manner. Whether or not taking your e-scooter down the pavement potentially could be used in an antisocial manner or would be seen as an antisocial manner, but using it on a road potentially wouldn't. So that's just sometimes where that legislation can't be used, and road traffic legislation is certainly more important. The bicycle element and the bicycle side of the issues that we have, I think that what we have seen is a lot of e-bikes coming through, and I've now been educated that there are different levels of e-bikes. I didn't quite understand. So you have an e-bike and an electric bike, of which there are two differences. The e-bike, you have to do some degree of pedaling, and it will only give you a certain amount of power, whereas an electric bike, you can literally flick a switch and you have electric power. And if you want to see an example of that, certainly I've seen it in Reading Town Centre with certain delivery drivers that seem to be able to go past me very quickly on steep hills without doing much effort. So, but the knock-on of that is that you do have bikes travelling at quite high speeds, and again, in and around town centres, that is causing issues and dangers. And again, the same enforcement element would apply from us, albeit the bikes have some distinction within the road traffic legislation. And really that's where we are at the moment. The only other thing I will just say as a side is that we are seeing a large increase in the theft of cycles. And that's not being centred around the town centre, but up towards the university. And again, the bikes that are being nicked or stolen, these electric bikes, they're costing £2,000 to £3,000. So, and it is because the thieves know just how expensive the bikes are, they become that more attractive. So Claire, I don't know if you want to add anything else at this stage, but I'm happy to take any questions. Hello.
Hi, Keith Baker.
Keith.
I think a couple of comments actually. I think the mix from the precinct, the mix of concern has shifted heavily from cycles, people riding cycles, normal pedal cycles,
Yes.
to e-bikes.
Yes.
And I've had plenty of elderly people who've been nearly knocked over, not when they're walking, but they're walking out of a shop. And so these people with these e-scooters are actually not going down the centre, they're going on the side. So to me, that's the issue we've got in the precinct. When you stop someone and you give them a warning if you do it again, unless you take a photograph of the person, there's no identification because there's no number plate or anything like that on the bike. That puts you, I think, in almost impossible situation.
And I would absolutely agree with you, and it's a really relevant point. I'd say, I mean, your first point again with the bikes, one of the things that was looked at in the studies that they conducted with looking at legal e-scooters and the bikes as well, but certainly with the scooters, is that they make almost no noise. And so, you know, there's visually it's quite difficult because they sit around and they go, but they can have flashing lights, but there is no audible warning to these. So they are looking at, certainly with the ones they're looking at potentially would be legal, that would have some sort of audible alarm. How that would work, I'm not sure. But it's not the legitimate user of those that we are concerned about. It is probably the people on e-bikes that are doing 20 miles an hour, going down the pavement in the precinct. And as you said, somebody steps out of a shop. And I think for us, within the precinct, certainly, it's actually a little bit easier because we can just enforce it completely. But it does bring you onto that second point, which is, you know, we have no power to formally ask for identification. We don't incur stop and search type powers because, again, they've not committed an offence under Section 1. And yeah, it does make life very difficult. So I think that certainly for the times that we've seen repeated use of e-bikes in certain locations, the teams certainly do start to identify the individuals. And that's what we're slightly reliant on. But it is a really valid point. And a bigger question probably as well.
David Bragg, supposing a bylaw was introduced about cycling, would that increase your powers of stopping people and taking action?
Potentially it could do. So we're talking about a no cycling area or something along the area. Again, that would be, because then we would be able to use enforceable tickets, so non-enforceable tickets, which would exactly cover those. So where the bylaw is in place. But I think that's probably a slightly larger discussion. But yes, that would be, and within the non-enforceable fixed penalty notices. If you can't sleep at night, I don't go through all the code. There are plenty of codes that would cover exactly those bylaws. So yes, it would be useful.
But that wouldn't cover an e-scooter, would it?
No, it wouldn't. No.
Bylaws are usually for pedal
Yeah.
cycles.
Hello.
Hi, Richard. Just out of curiosity, really, because I think what I've heard you say really is that there's not a lot you really can do, and if those youths aren't receptive to community pride or sensible behaviour, you really are fighting a losing battle, especially if the parents are similarly minded, and I'd imagine that's probably a problem that you encounter regularly. What for the adults, is the consequence potentially harsher? I suppose is the law that covers it, and I appreciate really there isn't a law that covers it, which is half the problem, isn't it? But are they effectively treated like the scooters? Are they effectively treated like bicycles, or are they just an entity unto themselves that isn't really classified, I suppose. That's my,
Yeah, I mean, you are right, they do, in some description, come under a non-entity because they don't fall under a pedal cycle. And obviously a pedal cycle can legally use a road, whereas an e-scooter cannot, because it's, I would go and find exactly, it's not a mechanically controlled vehicle. But under the road traffic legislation, it would have no exemption in terms of having an MOT or having valid insurance, and then certainly the rider would need to have a license, and all of those elements that they just clearly won't have. And I think, and actually is a really interesting point. So I think potentially with children, the team would be slightly, I wouldn't say lenient, but probably take a more educational view and hopefully find a receptive parent. Potentially,
I think with the youth, that's I mean, that's all you really can do, isn't it? And I think it's good that you're trying, to be fair. I suppose the thing that really worries me is I've noticed a lot. I mean, when I go back tonight, there will be fully grown men coming back from pubs on them,
yes,
and not behaving well.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, well, hold on, if they've been having 5 or 6 drinks and hopped on a pedal cycle, there's a consequence to that, you know. Yeah, again, I believe you can. Yeah. And it feels to me like actually you could do more damage on one of those e-scooters than you can on a conventional pedal bike. Yet it's almost like you can't get a dangerous cycling or a careless cycling charge hit because you're on a non-entity vehicle. It doesn't count, and it baffles me that there isn't anything that somebody's given you to enforce that.
I think, again, in that instance, then we would treat it as somebody using the road without insurance, and all those elements. And so definitely, we could, we'd enforce that. And then we would, if we had a report of somebody on an e-scooter in an active traffic or, as a particular hazard, then it would, translate into a grade 1 and then go out and do it. Yeah, I would hope so. But I think the point which is interesting is that we're not just dealing with youth, are we? We're not just dealing with people coming back from school. We're actually dealing with, as you said, grown individuals coming back from the train station, like at the 3 Tubs crossroad.
Yeah,
you quite often see multiple people going up and down. That's when we were out last on bikes, we stopped people doing exactly that. So I think there's slightly that if, as soon as the legislation is decided upon and enacted, then that may make our position slightly more clear. But as a team, we are clear that we've moved quite a long way through the educational phase, and that enforcement will be the next phase. And I'm sure that it will be contested as well. But then that's
The nature of the beast,
the
isn't
nature
it?
of what we do. So, but
Yeah, are you considering doing any more versions, if you like, of that one outset in the future?
yes, yeah, no, absolutely. I think I was actually saying just before I came into this meeting, I don't want to go to too many more meetings and say resourcing is always tight, because I think we have been saying that for an awfully long time. Resourcing is tight. We do have competing demands, but this is very much on our radar. We know it's an issue, and the way that we write the operations as they are, we can bring them to bear very quickly. So if we need to, it's something that we can put in place very quickly. So yes, we will be. And as the summer progresses and schools break up, then that would be an ideal opportunity. So yes, definitely. To do that.
Communication. One of the biggest issues I think residents, certainly I'm sure we all have the same thing, is you never see anyone. What happened to the PCSOs? We always used to see Claire all the time. We never see her. Now, the perception is they're not there. The reality is you are. Clearly, you are not going to announce, like these purges, you'd be foolish to announce you're doing it in advance. Once you've done it, I think the community would benefit, and you potentially could do it through the town council to actually do some press release or something on social media that said, Thames Valley Police, I wouldn't call it working in the north because it's not working in, but whatever, did a purge and they stopped 5 this, 2 that, they took away a bike, etc. And get that out, because you do, this is my perception, you do have an identity crisis out there of our residents, particularly the elderly, because they're never seen. And I know that's false, but it's there.
Yeah, no, I think it's, you're absolutely right, and I think that there has been a greater move towards social media and the use of social media, but that does exclude certain demographics as well, and that's, we are kind of unconscious of that. And I think that we used to use quite the local magazines to good effect. I personally do look for that update in the magazine, the local Labour team. We do still do that to certain publications, whether or not that's getting out to that demographic, I'm not sure. But I think in terms of going back to doing an operation like that, that we can say in conjunction with, Woodley Town Council would be fantastic. I'm sure that you support that. So it's something that we can, even if it were a case that we give you the dates and times that we go and do that, maybe there's a representative comes with us, observes what we do, and then we do a joint press release, then absolutely, because I think we're all on the same sheet, isn't it, in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So we'd be absolutely fine with that. And we are now given a little bit more freedom in terms of what we can say and do, instead of having to go through formal communications, which has always been the case.
But we've got resources, so
Yeah, that would be
and
great.
it's to our benefit, the town council's benefit, to actually expose what we do.
Used to be, we used to do monthly updates, so monthly updates, just to go and do
The CMI.
mine and all the different. As I know, we all know, like you said, is that there's members of the community that don't have laptops, that don't look online and have laptops like us. So it's those people that we want to get that message out, it's important. So it's maybe something I can look at doing again.
But it's actually the people who do have laptops, the people who are regularly on social media, they're not seeing anything. They see lots of stuff from the PCC, as you'd expect. Occasionally some stuff from TV, missing man or whatever.
Yeah.
Occasionally some good news about some drug ring has been prosecuted, blah, 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 blah.
I think it's something we definitely need to look at, because we do publish quite often updates of what the team are doing. I'm not tech savvy, so I don't keeping up with it, but we just need to look at how that message is going out, because again, I don't see why there would be any difference on putting on certain platforms that we're already looking at and extending that to other platforms so that it gets a wider audience. I can't see there being any problem with that at all. It probably is. I will need to sit down with our neighbour coordinator who does, so Karen Collins looks into all of that element, and
Well, that's on the table.
so, but it would be, I think, why not the publication, the update's already going out, so, and I personally would want to see that, and I think we have used that to good effect. Certainly when we're seeing crime trends that we really want to make people aware of quite quickly, obviously there is Thames Valley alerts, which I still, would recommend to everyone, because they are, again, the primary source, but second to that, we should be able to put this out. So again, if it's something that we can look at, absolutely.
One thing I've seen recently is that a move away from the rent a bike to actually rent a scooter. Danger is that here as well. Because I was in Europe fairly recently, these e-scooters were everywhere. And they've replaced all the electric, going and stop bike for a couple of hours and replace a whole lot of scooters.
Again, I've not looked into total depth, but I think we probably will move to a position where there is a registered company, they allow you to hire the scooters, they have their own public indemnity or insurance that will cover an accident, and so there's some, of course, should something happen, then that's right. I think that is the way that we will move. I think Europe will probably lead on that, but certainly we're seeing it in Oxford. There's been issues in London, but yeah, over time I think that worked. But as long as it's relatively regulated, then I guess that is a step forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your time.
We'll probably disappear if that's.
Thank you.
I must admit, yesterday found, apart from where I live, a young lad on a scooter in the middle of the road with 2 passengers, 3 on a scooter.
Did you get him?
Ready for weekends.
Shall we let my book come secrets?
That's the real story.
There it is, yes.
So we've got our own business. We're coming in.
Very ready.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We're buggered if we do, and we're buggered if we don't.
I think it's stalling until that things are going to.
Why is it taking so long for them to, to have the power to enforce this?
Well, they're waiting for the pilots to finish.
I know. When's that going to happen? Did I miss something or not? No. it goes
They were running them in
on.
Portsmouth last year when I was down there. My wife wouldn't let me hire one. Fair enough.
I saw them up in Minehead as well. And they were all through a company.
Yeah, it was very good. It's a bit like the Beryl bike. It's like, sorry, I spent a lot of time in Christchurch, but they're genuinely good. And you just abandon them in a box on the ground and your credit card gets zipped for the amount that you owe them.
I was in Lisbon about 2 months ago, and there were hundreds of them. All the electric coin and the slot bikes all being replaced by e-scooters, and they were all over the place. So there's absolutely no control. Pavements, roads.
I imagine in Lisbon that probably is quite entertaining.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, it would just come over here.
I'll teach you to go.
Yeah, having a nice time. Stop it. Yeah.
I can't understand though, if it's not legal to do it, how can these companies set up then? I didn't want to ask the question.
I think they have separate.
I know you sound like saying they've got their indemnity insurance, but if it's still against the law to ride, it's against the law to ride.
Yeah.
I think they're the ones who.
So they've been given permission.
I'm
to do
sure I've seen.
The trial is due to finish in November, 30th of November this year.
Oh, have they?
Oh, my birthday.
One day old, though.
It's pretty well a pick the date.
I'm not going to that party.
Long way off.
Okay,
Um,
right. Go on to the agenda then. So, you've got a word of that.
Chairman, can I just should we write to the two people? Thank you.
Yeah.
I might encourage them to come again.
So we'll hit the agenda. So Matthew, apologies, please.
Yeah, we've had one apology from Councillor Nagra.
Declarations of interest? No? No? Okay, thank you. So item 3 is the minutes of the Canning Community Committee meeting held on the 14th of June. They were provided to full council on the 21st, so can we take those as being read? I'll sign at the end. We're on to current planning applications. First one I've got is 221128, which is 52 Mallock Way. Proposed erection of a single-storey front extension, a single-storey rear extension, and 2-storey side extension, and change of use of amenity land to residential. The application does actually call it amenity land, I understand, but there may be some question about whether it is. My comment was this doubles the width of the house by taking amenity land, which is not part of the plot. Amenity land appears to be part of the nature reserve, and I understand maybe it isn't. And as such, it should stay in its current state. There's 2 letters of support and 1 objection stating environmental concerns and loss of wildlife. And by the time you added the first floor, it's virtually doubling the size of the property, which is moving to 4 bedrooms. Comments I've had back. Richard, the only bit that I'm uneasy about is the use of the land that was not originally part of the plot and why it was not part of the estate in the first place. With that said, the plans themselves look very sensible and the land looks pretty scrappy at first glance. I'm not convinced the community is losing anything, struggling to find an objection, so I think I'm okay with the proposal. Keith, I've been involved with this resident for many months. The land is proposed is not part of the nature reserve. It belongs to Taylor Wimpey. Therefore, it is not amenity land. For over 10 years, Taylor Wimpey have been planning to transfer this small parcel to WPC. It has not yet happened. This expansion is to accommodate the growth in family of the house, where they've got 2 children. The land is not managed, which the picture on the application shows. It has no impact on the street scene, and Keith says he supports it. Has anybody else got any comments?
Very similar. I support the application, based on, also on, there were 2 very positive comments, and one of them was saying, what a good idea, I wish I'd thought of it, and I'd have done it. It doesn't seem to impact anybody else, and normally I don't agree with amenity land, but this doesn't seem to be too much of a bother.
Okay. So I'll go around.
So I'm a support.
I will come to that. Carol?
I think the term amenity land is the red herring, because it's an amenity, whether it's amenity land or what it's viewed as. And I would object to this on the grounds of that as an amenity, just to, visually with the trees, etc. And I know people are saying it's okay. The ownership has got nothing to do with it. I would object on the fact that there's an amenity being lost, visual amenity.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm concerned with loss of wildlife habitat. Irrespective of who owns it, there's a continuous area of vegetation obviously going north. This is part of it. That it's not what it might be scrub, really. It's areas which are good for wildlife quite often are considered scrubby by people. They're not perceived marker. There's quite large bushes, almost small trees there. Irrespective of who owns it, it's part of the area that includes the Alderman Moors Nature Reserve. It's just part of that. The governor's size of the house, I'm not sure. I mean, I went there today. There are 3 cars outside the 2 houses at the end there, so there's a potential parking problem. But it's also the precedent. I mean, if it's all right for number 52, what about number 35? What about number 62? What about 52 to 57? Can they extend their gardens? What about Cody Close, Falcon, Lindbergh, Phillips Close? All of those, but this area, which is wildlife habitat. So it's not just going to be this, it's going to set a precedent which will be used all along that boundary.
Was it worth showing me? Was it worth showing me?
I've got an extract from the land registry, which I want to hand over, which are very relevant to the comments that have been made, because there's some false assumptions.
At the bottom here.
Zoom in for that. I'll zoom out when you need to.
There are already some houses which, I use the word encroached, but it's probably part of the plot anyway. I'm assuming that by the time 52 comes out, it's all drawn straight around.
You see a lot of old potential rather the houses doing something all the way along there.
Jenny?
It said in the comment stroke statement letter that the applicants had been having discussions with Taylor Wimpey, but it didn't say what the conclusion was. It just said we've been having discussions. Now, if this land actually belongs to Taylor Wimpey, then WBC cannot give planning permission for this application.
Yes, they can. You can apply for planning permission on any plot of land. I could apply for an extension on your land.
Absolutely, but it can't be given.
Yes, it can.
Of course it can.
The fact that the ownership is irrelevant. I could apply where you live to demolish your house and build a multi-story car park, and you couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't do it because I don't own the land.
Would WBC do
They
that.
probably
give
would, something
permission.
extreme like that.
I'm not talking about your example, but would they do it when in fact part of the land belongs to somebody else?
Yes,
They would.
the ownership
Mind
of
you,
land
they've
is
taken these
irrelevant.
so-called amenity land when it doesn't actually belong to the council, don't they? They do it all the time.
Yeah, well, my comment was going to be the same as yours, but the houses opposite have already done it by extending their gardens out into there, so
Don't know.
the precedent is already there.
It might have been planned like that, we don't know.
So we don't know whether they were built like that or whether.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's clearly are other, if you go down a bit, yeah, that the house on the end there, that's 35, but they'll be able to do the same. You see that precedent.
That's better.
Can I bring some reality to some comments? As I said, I've been working for months with this gentleman and Taylor Wimpey and the BBC. So this is an extract from the land registry. Just to remember. And the land register or registry clearly defines it as owned by Taylor Wimpey.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine.
So the hash part is WBC, that's Oldham, all right? So when you say down there about 62, 63 encroaching, if they're going to encroach, they would encroach into Oldham Moors nature reserve, okay, not onto private land. The land we're talking about is that little green section there with a tiny little sliver for 35. So you'd be lucky to get the width of fence in there. All right, it's this little, it's that slip which isn't hashed.
Yeah.
All right, so it's not amenity, it's private land. You know, I know hear what Carol says, but then that, if that was true, then my garden is amenity land, and your garden is amenity land, etc.
This is amenity for them. And my neighbours.
Anyway, so that's so really calling it amenity land is, I think, totally incorrect. In terms of the current ownership, and I know we've gone through the ownership, etc., but a question was asked. Taylor Wimpey are still going through the process after 10 years of transferring it to Woking Borough. They've been eager and going bouncing around legal, etc. I've got all the documentation that goes with it. Even if we approve it here, it will be down to the Borough Council to make that decision. You know, the picture, those of you who haven't looked, this is real scrubland, and there's got to be to me, a definition of what's good and what's bad. You know, and my neighbour, for instance, had a terrible jungle next door, and boy was I pleased when they cut it all down. But you know, somebody could have said you can't do that because it's an amenity, it's environmentally friendly, etc. It's totally derelict, and the obvious reasons being Taylor Wimpey don't commit resources to doing this sort of thing, keeping it clean, clear. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer. If this isn't through, then the family will have to move. I know that's not a planning consideration, but yeah. So I fully support this on those basis.
This is not scrubland. Description of scrubland is completely erroneous. I went there, went around the back, and I went looked at it from the side of the houses. There's significant large bushes, small trees. It's not scrub. And it's no difference in vegetation in that little bit area that Pete has highlighted, in the vegetation further over. There's no difference at all. It's all the same type of vegetation. So I think, you know, the ownership is erroneous in terms of the amenity. It's just the same as anywhere else in that area.
So, Amy, you wanted to say something else?
Yes, about the ownership. Taylor, you said Taylor Wimpey have been talking to WBC for 10 years. Why has it taken 10 years and they haven't got anywhere?
You have to ask Taylor Wimpey and
Or
WBC.
more likely ask WBC.
No, I think it's 6.5 dozen either. It's a small parcel of land. It's a minor piece of the Taylor Wimpey empire. Are they going to commit legal resources because it has to be a legal transfer? WBC has probably gone through in 10 years at least 7 or 8 different legal officers on this case. And then an officer goes and then it dies back and then somebody raises it, etc.
Which suggests it's not ever going to happen, doesn't it?
Well, who knows?
We don't
The
know.
residents are fully aware because they've had a dialogue with Taylor Wimpey. I've seen copies of their communications, and they're fully aware that even if this application goes through, it might not happen because if they can't get ownership, whether it's ownership from Taylor Wimpey or ownership from WBC, it isn't going to happen. They're fully aware of that, and they accept that that's a risk. And I haven't pulled any punches with them whatsoever, but they love it there so much, they like it so much, they're willing to take that risk. And if they can't buy it, then which is not planned.
So I think, sorry, last.
I just said, in an effort to move business on,
I was going to take a vote.
propose that this one, we say that refuse it. I've got a second.
I think we should take a vote on this one. So all those, show
You've got a
hands.
second. Did second one?
Mark, you need a second. Isn't it just the
Yes,
vote?
no, if it's a proposal, it has to have a second one.
Yeah, but if there isn't, then of course.
I didn't quite follow why it was a proposal and not just a vote on it.
No.
No, because the proposal is to refuse. I would do a proposal to say accept,
We
so.
don't normally do that, do
We
we?
normally just say yes or no. We don't normally argue this one,
This is
which is
red.
why I want to move on with it. Because
So
it's the agenda.
it looks as if we're minded to accept concerns about the ownership of the land, but I appreciate that's not a planning matter.
Yeah.
Do you want to move to?
Yeah, we can take a vote on it by all means. So can we take a vote then, please? Those in favour of accepting?
I'll go with your caveats right down, but we're concerned about whatever it was.
The ownership of the
Okay?
land. 4. Those against?
Recall.
1. Abstentions?
Yeah, well, you read my comments. I think I was pretty clear. I'm
You were pretty clear that you were unclear.
for me, it's about officers and the simple, I mean, the thing that hangs over me is what would Wokingham do if they were given that? If it becomes part of a nature reserve, I'd be minded to object to it. If it just was left to fester and the bits that aren't part of the main, I'd pretty be ready to agree with it. So I think I'd rather let the officers do their thing and have an impossible decision to make that I don't have to.
I'll take offence away now.
I haven't. It's part of the brand, isn't it, Karen?
Right, let's move on. Number 2 is 221627, which is 23 Nightingale Road. 2.5 metre extension to the rear in one area, 1.5 metres elsewhere. Concerns from the neighbour about building onto the main drainage, which is to the rear. But they claim that about 20 years ago they put an application in and it was refused, in which case it's a building issue and not a planning issue. The other comments I've got, I don't see where an objection would be valid. The drainage issue is one for officers to determine. And the other comment was concerns over the main drainage from a plan 20 years ago. Things are different now, no objection. So do we have any, so we're quite happy with that?
Yeah, I can't see.
Just like to note, we note neighbours' concerns about drainage. No objection ourselves. Next one is 221695, which is 71 Woodlands. 2.5 metre extension to the rear in one area, 1.5 metres elsewhere. Concerns from the neighbour about building onto the main drainage, which is to the rear. Concerns from the neighbour about building onto the main drainage, which is to the rear. This is a loft conversion to provide 2 additional bedrooms with some major internal changes. Rear extension to half the property by pushing the building line back and building across. 2 large flat dormers to convert from a bungalow to dormer bungalow. Some comments from a neighbour about encroachment onto or over their land. I couldn't see any other properties locally which have had extensions of that type, although it has been used elsewhere in Wigley. Other comments: I expect that this will be passed, but I don't like the full height double dormer, missing or out of character. It is too big in my opinion. Object. The extension is huge. Every bedroom has ensuite. It is totally out of keeping with the surrounding bungalows. Object. Comments, please. Carol.
Yes, I didn't send in my comments, so I've already done. The location plan is wrong for starts. It's totally through because it says the house is opposite House Drive and it's opposite Wood Way. They really ought to check these things before they go through. I was really objecting to that glazed rear gable, and we have had one before in Woodlands Avenue, I'm pretty sure. And because it's angled, the house, it will overlook the garden because of that huge height. There's plenty of view. So I think it's overdevelopment, and I don't think it's very neighbourly, so I would object to it.
Anybody else want to say anything? So it looks as if we're minded to object to that one. Everyone knows? Yeah. Super. Okay. Next one is 221723, the Cadet Centre Mohawk Way. If you can work out what it is they're asking for. It's a 2.4 metre cube storage unit.
That's already there.
Adjacent to the existing training facility, which is already. No problems on that one? So don't have an issue on that one. 2217, which is 29 Concord Way. Replace the existing covered side storage area with a solid utility area linked to the main house. A new front porch, but it's not extended as far as the study is, although I think the study was probably a garage at one time, which has been converted. I've got 2 lots of no objections. Are we happy with that one?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
By the way, Philip, just a point of information. I think you made a comment about it went out to the storage being the boundary line. You can do that. I did that. I had to cut I did an extension, and I utilised the coal bunker that was at the end of a shed, but was all connected to the main house. And I went right out as far as the coal bunker, so it's considered to be an extra meter.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue. 221830, which is 21 Austin Road. Another side extension with the 5th bedroom over a new utility area. Minimal parking on this site due to the close proximity of the junction. The original house is now more than double its original footprint. The rear extension is the full width of the current house and may have a detrimental effect on number 19. The rear extension is approximately 3 metres deep. The house has just got wider and wider and wider until I don't think it can get any further. And the 3 metres extension is single. Yes, Jenny.
I think it's in front of the building line on this road. You know, it's on the corner.
This is on the corner. I think it's just.
The building line, isn't it?
I think it's flush.
It's
Isn't it?
in front of the building line. It's at the front, so. Sorry, it's there. It's only your front that could be in front of the building line.
Not the side, even though it's in the front of that road. Okay.
I mean, it's within the existing fenced area, from what I can tell.
Aesthetically, it's a bit of an overdevelopment, isn't it?
Doesn't even
But no,
touch
nobody objected, did they? So,
I don't think they can go much further than they build onto the road. Okay, so we're happy with that one, are we? 221942 is 54 Manor Way, replacement of existing vast conservatory with a more solid structure. Similar footprint to the conservatory, going approximately 1/3 the width of the house. I've got 2 lots of no objections, no comments. Anybody want to say anything on that? We'd be happy with that one.
it's a like for like.
Happy with that one, that's fine. 21 Lavenham Drive, which is 221940, a 4 metre deep rear extension to create a new rear to the building on the ground floor. This replaces the brick storage area to the rear appears to take this as the building line across the back.
That was the one I was thinking of.
Sorry. Some major changes to drainage. Comments looks okay because the front is already shielded by the garage, no objection, and no objection from Keith, and I don't have a particular issue with that. Nobody else does. No, I'm happy with that one. And the last one, which is 221953, which is 50 Selsdon Avenue. Conversion of a loft with a rear-facing gable to provide a fifth bedroom. Parking is tight in this area with 3 spaces shown on the plans. Concerns about the chimney as this affects the neighbour, but assume this is a building matter and not a planning matter. Comments: does this create an overlooking problem on Butts Hill Road? Not keen on full height dormers as they are a bit out of character. And Keith says no objections. Any comments?
I was a bit worried about the parking, that if it's 5 bedrooms and only 3 spaces.
3 tight spaces.
Yeah, that's reason to turn it down, I don't know.
Well, I was reasoning, we can certainly place some concerns about parking. Happy with that?
That would be my only.
So we've got no problems, but we have a concern about parking.
It's going to look out of place as well with all the other.
The gable's at the back,
Selsdon Avenue.
yeah, so you won't see the gables because the gable is at the back. That's the only saving grace, I suppose.
From Butts Hill Road, yeah.
Well, that's I think where my comment comes from is there's a house that's done it on Quinton Road, which I walk past quite regularly. That you can see from Fairwater with this monstrosity just sticking out. And actually, I would have gone, oh, you can't see that, but actually you really can see it because of the angle of it. Now, I don't think that one would have that issue, but I think if I was on Butts Hill Road, I would be thinking, oh. But saying that, I mean, these things go through. I don't like it, but that's not a reason to object to it. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to have my top and I really don't like full height dormers, and that's my prerogative. But beyond that, I really can't think of a problem.
But the parking is a problem.
Parking, yeah, definitely.
Objection.
Go with that.
Selsdon Avenue is the notorious for parking.
Yeah.
I've got the cycle lane down there.
Item 5, planning decisions. I think we deserve a pat on the back this month, don't we? Because I think we've got them all right. That must be a first. So they got them all right. Both of them got them all right.
I'm worried. I'm agreeing with planning officers at Woking Borough. Dark side.
Once they agree with us. Item 6 then, is planning appeals. Just a note, 6 Brunel Drive, the raising of the roof to facilitate conversion of the loft. We had objections to that proposal, so that's gone to appeal. And 210668 land to the northeast of Vauxhall Drive, installation of a 20-high pole. That has also gone to appeal, although I understand now the appeal was dismissed. So I'm not sure what's going to happen next.
It's quite rare for appeal inspector to turn and refuse mobile phone. Very rare.
Move on to item 7. Just to note, 10 Dartington Avenue, application for the prior approval of a single-storey rear extension, which would extend beyond the rear wall of the original house by 3.5 metres, for which the maximum height would be 3.4, and the height to the eaves 2.25. So I'm assuming it doesn't require consultations. Accepted development. Item 8. Here we go, another poll. This one, the land of Coleman's-Moor. Welcome comments on that.
It doesn't require consultation yet. This is prior approval, isn't it?
Yes.
So presumably we'll get into the
We will do. We just
consultation.
need to be aware.
We have been warned.
That's the.
It was interesting, I read one of the notes that they seem to think that the site, because the site is slightly raised, by putting a 15-metre pole up, the site is already about 1 metre higher, so it gives them 16 metres. Interesting. It's definitely a very, very nice place for a few residents. unfortunately, these things we need. It's just we don't.
They used to have them disguised as trees.
Yeah.
20 years ago, they would put the dishes and what have you on poles and then effectively do false foliage. Or on lampposts as well.
That's a lovely
They're too
idea.
high now, please.
Too high.
Yeah, they are, yeah. The great redwood or something.
Well, John,
Well, I wouldn't describe John as great.
Maybe use the word sequoia. Safer.
Okay, we move on to item 9 then, tree preservation orders. Do you want me to go through these or can we take them as read?
It's red. I'll have one on there next month. Yeah.
Item 10 then is goods vehicles operators license. BDT Transport want 30 heavy goods vehicles and 12 trailers. This is a variation. No specific objections were raised or requested to be sent to Oakham for consideration. I checked on this one, didn't I, to make sure it was circulated.
We circulated it to all the kind of neighbouring of the industrial estate, even though the driveway in is not necessarily near any kind of public. The whole south end is, so we circulated letters to all of them.
Okay, so does anybody want to make any comment on that? I was going to suggest that the last time we had a large application, we did actually write and say, what are they going to do to minimise the environmental impact of having 30 additional heavy goods vehicles? I think we should.
Well, it's not 30 additional, it's 30 in total.
How many have they got now?
I think
20. So
It's 20 now, so it's going from 20 to 30.
Additional 10.
But the question's got to be asked, when is enough enough?
sorry, I don't just use the WBC calculations for HGV movements that they used for AdWest, which actually will tell that this development happened. It will be fewer movements than there is today. Not. Sorry, I shouldn't let my.
But I mean,
I thought they used that.
yeah. I mean, it's not only BDT. We've got Smith's coaches down there. There's one or two other organisations using heavy lorries to go out either into Viscount Way or onto Headley Road. We got the AdWest building, but we don't know yet what is going to happen. All right, I know planning has been refused for the moment, but the original instructions there had parking spaces for 20 articulated lorries. All of this, I mean, the poor people that live in Gemini Road or more Lily flats in Baker's Place, it's going to have a big effect on them.
But we need to balance it up. This whole area is an industrial area.
Well, yeah.
The ones in Gemini was Limpac industrial unit. It was industrial area. The Baker's Court, etc., and Miller's Grove was Perslow's Bakery, an industrial area. So I can understand, but those people who moved in there, and Lily May Court's different because the housing association have actually screwed up big time. That's different. But the people in Gemini and Limpac, they knew precisely where they were going.
Oh, yeah, no.
So either we want industrial or not. I agree there's eventually going to be a limit, but the limit would be in terms of road capacity, not what people want.
Yeah, but the road capacity on Headley Road East is limited at the moment. You get the lorries reversing in and out on the spaces, which block the traffic.
There's only one building that does
Way
that.
was not built as a road to handle the volume of heavy duty lorries.
Anyway, we digress.
I think one problem is that it's a 50% increase in vehicles, but we don't know what the increase in movement would be. This is the movements rather than the vehicles, which is the problem. I think we need to draft a letter out similar to the one last time. But I think we made some comment last time about that company having an environmental management system. I don't know whether or not BT have got one.
We can have a look at the letter we drafted last time and do something and have a look into the company.
Yeah, so if you can. Yeah.
Is this not after the fact though?
The letter that went out last time was after the application to say, assuming it's approved, what mitigating factors are you putting in place for environmental policy?
But has this not been approved? The deadline for comments has passed. hasn't it?
Yes, yeah, this is us writing to the company and just saying, what are you doing as a company?
Yes.
All right, it's fine.
Do that. If you can let me have a copy, and then I'll do some investigation and see what we need to include, if anything. Item 11 then is just a note, thanks from Keep Mobile for the annual grant they had for 2022-2023. Item 12 is to note report on page 11, the Cycling Woodley Subcommittee. That's the 29th of June, yeah.
It notes that Wayne Road not considered safe for cycling, which still both bit, which is fine. There's nothing here to make the point which I did make, people, that there is a perfectly good route up Bedford Hill Road from the top of the airfield. There's no mention of that in these minutes at all. I think they ought to be. All we get from this is that, would we not really make use of the cycleway because Wayne's Road is dangerous, which is a good point. But there is another route that was discussed at this meeting. It's not in these minutes.
I can amend that. Sorry, I was writing. I can amend that. Please.
Okay, so you can amend the minutes.
Yeah,
that's fine.
It's just a report to the next time. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I say, Alex, by the way, I have read your correspondence. Thank you for it. You're doing a good job.
Okay, moving on to item 13, Wokingham Borough Council Gypsy and Travel Accommodation Assessment. On page 13. And there's a questionnaire. Do you want to respond to the questionnaire? Carol?
Chairman, it's really difficult for a committee to respond to a questionnaire because there's so many different views. Could I propose that we delegate the completion of that to our chairman, or somebody delegated by him if he can't do it, and replies as a councillor? Everybody else wants to fill out the questionnaire as a councillor to do so, but I think trying to pull everybody's ideas and get everybody to agree on one reply is almost impossible. So that's a proposal.
Anybody else?
Was this the one where we got an extension on the?
Yes, the deadline they provided was the 30th of June. Obviously, with this meeting taking place on the 12th of July, they've agreed that we could provide that by the 14th of July. So that's by Wednesday.
So we'd be able as councillors to. So if I wanted to do that just as a independent human.
As you are.
Indeed. What I don't want to do is go through it and then get them go, no. Although you're a Woodley Town Councillor, you missed the boat. It was only for that council correspondence.
Yeah, I mean they've stated as part of their stakeholder consultation, which suggests this has gone out to specific individuals as opposed to a wider consultation. I can't imagine if you wanted to go on and provide it that they wouldn't take it, but I don't believe it's necessarily for individuals. This was obviously sent to us as a council to provide a council response to the issue. So whilst I'm sure if anyone who sees this agenda went on and probably they might take the comments into account, they're really looking for stakeholder engagement, as far as I'm aware.
The problem is this is covering Wokingham in total, isn't it? And not Woodley specific.
Very different. Yeah. Rural.
Chair, as I was fortunate or unfortunate to one of my former lives, executive member with responsible for GRT travellers, which was it was actually very, very interesting. It's a horrendously complex subject. Even I, having done that, been responsible for them for 3 years, even I would hesitate in filling in the survey that talks about bricks and mortar. Have you got any idea of how many? Well, for instance, in what's the road around Alexandra? No.
Southlake Crescent.
Southlake Crescent. When I was doing it, there was actually 4 families, GRT families, in bricks and mortar. I knew that because of the job I was doing. So I just caution anybody who wants to have a go at it, because you'll probably not have enough information to do it properly. But it's a great subject to get into.
Yeah.
If you want a specialist subject, travellers, it really is interesting. And they get a lot of bum press.
Oh yeah, I think it is. Like any other group of people. It's lovely.
Anyway, sorry. I just thought I'd add that.
Okay. So we're looking for a volunteer, or are we going to we're going to forego completing the question?
I think if there's any doubt, leave it out, because it's not very, if somebody doesn't know the information, then it's not really going to be very useful.
Too much.
I certainly looked at it and thought, I don't know.
I think it'd be too much guesswork, wouldn't it?
Yeah, agreed. It wouldn't be fair to.
It wouldn't be of any benefit.
Yeah.
I've got to admit, I wouldn't do that. It would be dangerous, you know, bias will come out and, no.
Okay, so we decided not to complete. 14, the Sandford Park Bailey Bridge, page 23, which is a response that we've had with regards to the allocation of funds, I believe. So it's just a question of noting the replies. You need to say anything on that? Okay. Item 15 is the active travel routes. Now, I only got some of the details of this yesterday.
Engagement. Sorry, survey. Current engagement, or whatever they call it.
We have until
19.
Would you like?
It started today, the 11th, through to the 19th of July. And the officers are coming here on the 9th.
They are, yes. At the time of obviously putting this agenda out, we were unaware of the details of the consultation and the dates, which is why obviously it's not included in the agenda to provide a council response to it. At the time, it was to note, as it says here, to note this is the original updated proposals that they provided here. It was in June, and they had stakeholder engagement during the middle of June, where people were invited to come along and check and see, which we had at the last meeting. So that's to note that information, because obviously the exact designs they were providing came after our last meeting. They then provided us with a further revision to option 5, which was again included in here for noting. And then also, as it says in here, item C is to note that representatives of the planning department will be attending our next meeting to present briefly on the proposals and to take any questions from members, and obviously any member of the public that might wish to come along to that meeting. And obviously there'll be an agenda item on the next meeting to consider a formal council response to the consultation.
It's very interesting because it doesn't ask you like the last one, you know, do you prefer this or that? If you had to, it's very crap, basically. But it's very, you know, would this encourage you to do more cycling? Questions like that, you know, motherhood and apple pie, I think they've learned from the last survey, by the way, they call it survey, not to be too open. And they're running it, guess what, during holidays.
There's the money there, isn't it?
It's terrible. It's wrong. But anyway, please fill in the survey.
Already done.
Okay.
I will, but I won't be at the next meeting because I'm on holiday.
That's an excuse.
But
So everybody needs to
will do, no question about it.
come back if you've got some comments, which in the meantime.
Yeah, I won't be here, but I'll send them through to yourself and Matthew.
You can sort that out. Okay, so we need to pick that up once everyone's had a proper opportunity to go through the plans, which you just turned up. Okay. Okay, we move on to item 16. David, any updates on speed?
No, I've got no update to give. Unfortunately, I had a major computer malfunction about 3 weeks ago, which I didn't finally get it back working again until Friday. So, you know, I'm sorry, I can't give any update at all at the moment.
These things will happen.
Yeah.
If you will use an abacus.
It's doing your photos for the opening of the park. Unfortunately, I tried to edit one or two on my system, and all of a sudden the screen went blank and said you had 7 megabytes left. You can't do a lot with 7 megabytes. And so I've had to have a new hard drive put in, a new backup system linked into the computer, which didn't work when it arrived, but it's back working now. So hopefully the next one I should be back online, but at the moment I am sorry, but yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, David. Item 17 is the early station footbridge. We're given to believe that there should have been an inspection in the middle of June. And Matthew has written again to Oakham to say, if there was an inspection, can we please see the results to know what the status of it is? We haven't had a response to that yet. Item 18, community issues. Any recent community issues noted other than e-bikes and cycling in the precinct?
Magnificent carnival. I know some of us were there. Come back with a bang.
Certainly was.
Item 19, any highways issues?
Yeah, I've noticed one. All of them, you know, that there was quite, I mean, particularly around South Lake, there's a lot of it, but I'm determined now to head off into some of the roads over that way that had the spray on top coat. But Nightingale Road, a specific one, the mini roundabouts have no paint left on them whatsoever. I think they were only painted about 4 years ago. But I mean, I saw a car just drive straight over one and nearly get sideswiped. So I thought perhaps it might be one to keep an eye on.
You need to report it.
Oh no, yeah, I have done. Yeah, it's but again, it seems to be around that resurfacing type. I don't know whether or not they did it too early or, but it's legal.
That's trouble.
Well, that's it. But I don't often drive down Nightingale Road for obvious reasons, and that, you know, that'd be lazy. But I was trying to fix my mum's car at the time. And, oh, hang on.
You know, those roundabouts are designed to drive over.
Oh no, yeah, I think it was driving over at 30 miles an hour when another car right away that was,
Giving way,
and the look, you know, the sort of, it didn't look like somebody that would just ignore somebody's right of way, if that makes sense. It was a sensible, middle-aged Ford Fiesta, with a mature driver rather than,
Choosing your words very carefully.
yeah. It wasn't an Audi with a 20-year up behind the wheel.
I mean, on the roads issue, one question, we had police talking to us about cycling in the precinct. Should we not be pressing to have the signage that's written on the pavement improved a little bit to make people more aware that cycling is not permitted in the precinct?
Is that a Wokingham issue as well?
I think it would be working.
A road, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, I suppose if nobody tells them, they're not going to do it, are they?
That's right. I mean, it's very worn out in many places. If it was refreshed, at least it would stand out to people. No cycling.
It was, Chair, I'll just add that it was something that was mentioned briefly at the cycling working, subcommittee, and Rob Curtis did say take that back to the team, but we could follow up on
Follow it up,
that.
don't assume an officer.
No, we can follow it up on the basis that that discussion.
I prefer stingers, actually. Gotcha.
Okay, anything else on the highway? Item 20 is the publications, so you should have had the electronic copies of the Town Centre Partnership newsletters, CCB e-bulletin, Wokingham Volunteer Centre e-newsletter, and the Me Too Club newsletter. If you didn't get them, please just drop an email to Matthew and we'll make sure that you get the copy. 21, any future agenda items? As if the agenda is going to stay very much as it is anyway. No? Okay, thank you. Website publicity. Item 22. Have you got anything that needs to?
I'll say what I do every 2 or 3 months. Planning committee doesn't seem to do any publicity. No, you are praising the committee for getting everything right. And Carol corrected us quite rightly, saying that they got, so, something like that, a simple press release or a statement that, this committee is working on behalf of residents and we're in sync with. But we never do. We never actually talk about our successes here.
Could we mention our visit from the police this evening?
Yeah.
I mean, we could lead it off with police in the council meeting, and we might get some people reading it before they discover they were invited. But again, that might help reiterate that we are trying to address that, and also the police are genuinely trying to. I doubt it'll reach the right people, but some people might be reassured by it, mightn't they?
Something's different.
Both those
Yes.
answers.
Yes. Nobody likes to feel a problem being ignored, do they? Even if there's nothing we can do about it.
Okay, so we'll see what we can do on the website with regards to this visit. Maybe a half a paragraph or something. Wonderful, we were.
Thank God, it's gone past.
On his phone.
On his phone, yeah.
Okay, so item 23 then is pages 81 and 82, which are the enforcement notices. The notification 66 Mannock Way, boundary wall being constructed enclosing an area of amenity land. 33 Cottersmore Road, windows not in accordance with approved plans. 2 Munro Avenue, front porch being erected without planning permission. 22 Rochester Avenue, new wall in front garden without planning permission. 10 Linden Road, additional brick garages and outbuildings erected to full length of garden. 8 Roxton Road, building work not in accordance with approved plans. And then enforcement and closures. 67 Woodlands Avenue, a large outbuilding in the rear garden without planning permission and possibly QPO damage, no breach. 6 Malone Road, rear extension, also changing the garage to a room without planning permission, application submitted. And 33 Cottersmore Road, potential side window in property without planning permission, no breach, which I'm assuming links to the enforcement notice that we mentioned previously about windows not in accordance with the plan. Any comments on any of those? No? Thank you. I consider the meeting closed. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Go outside and cool down.
Your confidential.